Dear students, very good morning. So I think you all are at your homes and you might be worried about your syllabus also. So today I'll be talking about garment dyeing. As you all know that we are using garments for n number of applications these days. In fact, textiles are no longer limited to their use in apples. We are using them in technical textile applications also. As we continue to struggle to combat COVID-19, this clothing happens to be the front line to defend our frontline people like doctors, paramedical staff, and all other people who are associated with this field, like your police personnel and all around the world. So we'll be limiting our discussion to basically dyeing today itself, because it's there in your section D of the subject. That is, the topic is garment dyeing. So today we'll be talking about dyeing basically. See, as we've talked in the third semester and we've talked in fifth semester also, I think third, fourth and fifth semesters, you've been told about dyeing. So just to be recalling those concepts so that these are beneficial to you in the case of garment dyeing. See, dyeing is the process of thorough coloration of textiles. We are thoroughly dyeing the cloth. See, there is one more technology associated with the coloration, that is printing, whereby we are having a localized effect. We'll be producing localized printed patterns. Localized colored patterns will be produced on the fabric. Whereas in the case of dyeing, there will be thorough coloration of textiles. We'll be dyeing the fabric entirely with the help of dyeing technique. So this is precisely what dyeing is. See, this is not that easy the way it seems, because a lot of various aspects are involved in dyeing. Fiber is there, which is playing an important role. Then again, technology of dyeing is important. The conditions at which dyeing is being done, that is also important. So all these things together, they make a scenario which makes dyeing process a bit complicated, because otherwise, had it been so easy, everybody could have been dyeing their clothes at their homes. So coming on to this dyeing, as I told you earlier, dyeing is the process of thorough coloration of textiles. See, there are various stages by which we dye our clothes. It is not that easy that you use a dye and then it will be over. Dyeing of textiles can be done in different forms. Say, we can dye the fiber as such, we can dye the yarn as such, we can dye the fabric, or we can dye the garment also. There are a number of ways by which we can dye the textile products. Likewise, as I told you earlier, we can dye the fiber also, we can dye the yarn also, we can dye the fabric also, or as is in our case, we can also dye the fabric in garment stage also. Once we prepare the cloth, once we prepare the garment, that can also be dyed. Every step has its own pros and cons. So prior to that, we'll be talking slightly in detail about what are the various aspects which are involved in dyeing. Basically, there are two ways by which we can do dyeing. One is by exhaustion technique, the other one is padding technique. In exhaustion, we are first bringing the dye to the dye solution, and then from that dye solution it is going on to the surface, and from that surface it is absorbed on the surface, and in step number 3 it is being diffused inside, and in step number 4 there are to be fixation. The dye molecules will be fixed inside the fiber structure. That is how the actual dyeing takes place by the exhaust method. And the other one method is of padding, although rarely used, but in continuous forms, when we are processing fabric in continuous forms. In some cases, we are nowadays going ahead with this technique of your padding. quite unconventional in time, but to a certain extent some of the people are, some of the industries, they are doing it for uh, non-conventional products, non-conventional processes. In padding will be you'll be just like the way it happens in finishing. You'll be padding the things, and then we are forcefully applying the dye molecules onto the structure. But in both the cases, we require this thing to happen. Yes, molecule has to get inside the structure. It has to adhere to the structure, because if dye structure is not getting inside the fiber structure, it will cause problem of fastness, poor fastness. There may be poor fastness to light, there may be poor fastness to washing, there may be poor fastness to rubbing, or there may be poor fastness to perspiration. For this, the dye molecule needs to be fixed inside the structure. So once we are doing these steps, all these 4 steps in exhaustion, which is being widely used method in dyeing. So one thing which comes out here is this, that we need to prepare the fabric well. All these things dyeing can happen only and only when you have even surface, you have even material which is having very almost negligible impurities, which is absolutely white. These are some of the important requirements as far as dyeing is concerned. The material which needs to be dyed, it needs to be free from impurities, and it ought to have some absorbency. There are 2 important points. One is absorbency, and number 2 is whiteness. Without these 2, our dyeing will not be even. So I've told you what is dyeing, how we are going ahead in dyeing, and then next is, but what are the other things which are very important for even dyeing? See, otherwise people will be just preparing the fabric and they'll be just dyeing it, but then there'll be some patches. They won't be even dyeing, and there is no even dyeing. Obviously, the surface won't look the way it should look ideally. So prior to that dyeing, we need to improve our fabric. How we are improving it? We are improving it by imparting the so-called pre-treatments. And what are those pre-treatments doing basically? Those pre-treatments are resulting in increased absorbency in the material, and number 2, increased whiteness in the material. Once these 2 things are done, like we are removing the, say we talk about cotton fiber. You know, cotton is a natural fiber which we are getting from the nature itself. It has its natural impurities with it. See, on the outer surface, that is your primary cell wall, it contains vexes, pectin substances, which hinders the absorbency of the material. So now these materials needs to be removed. Then when we are forming the yarn, then during yarn formation also some added impurities are getting inside the material. Then the time of weaving, we need to impart a very important step of sizing to the warp yarn, to impart strength to the warp yarn so that it doesn't break on the loom itself. So that process of sizing is again adding something which needs to be removed. That sizing material needs to be removed from the cotton fibers. Then these 3-4 processes needs to be removed. Then there are some protein fibers. Since we are going ahead with the spinning process, we are forming the yarn from short staple fibers. There may be some fibers which are on the surface. This appearance of the fibers on the surface will cause hazy appearance on the fabric surface. So we need to burn those fibers by the process of singeing. So prior to dyeing, what we are doing, we are removing all these impurities, and then we have some colored impurities which needs to be removed, because otherwise there will be interference of the colors which will be causing some other shade to appear at some places if we do not remove the colored impurities from the surface. Once those colored impurities are removed, you can get a fabric having good whiteness. You can have, in fact, a fabric having more even color on the surface. That is, more even dyeing will result by improving our pre-treatment processes, by imparting our pre-treatment processes in a precisely controlled manner. Because during the pre-treatment also there should not be a loss of material. The time we are removing impurities, too much material loss should not be there. Say if in scurrying we are going ahead with this impurity removal, if we have removed extreme level of impurities, we have made material more brittle, then again the weight loss will be on the higher side, which is also not desirable. So there has to be a balance of the removal of impurities and to optimize its cost also. So if we are interested in lighter shade, we have to remove more impurities. If we are interested in with duller shades, then the level of impurity removal has to be on the slightly lesser side. So with this, these are some of the pre-treatments which are imparted, and we are actually doing what? We are actually removing the impurities. And in addition to that, we are also having one scurrying process and bleaching process. So whatever this natural impurities I told you, is likewise in case of cotton, we had this pectic substances on the outer cell wall of the fiber that needs to be removed. So that we are removing by the process of scurrying. As you all know, scurrying is the process of removal of your natural impurities from the natural as well as your added impurities from the fiber surface, for which we are using this sodium carbonate, also sodium hydroxide, and some other additives are being used. Some other agents are also being used in the recipe for this scurrying process. So after that scurrying operation, we are also doing the process of bleaching. So what is bleaching? As you all know, it's the process of removal of the colored impurities. All the colored impurities will be removed by the process of bleaching, whereby we are converting your double bonds into single bonds, which will cause that material will not reflect light, and as a result of it, they will be becoming, they'll be losing their color. We are destroying coloring material by either oxidizing the colored impurities or by reducing the colored impurities. So once you've done this, then one more process is there in case of cotton, that is mercerization. See, mercerization is a process whereby which we are treating the cotton fiber with your sodium hydroxide at a slightly very high concentration, in fact. So this is to swell the fiber. Why we are going for swelling? We are interested in swelling the fiber because we want the material to be more lustrous. We want to increase the dye uptake. Reactivity has to improve. For that, we are going ahead with the process of mercerization. So by that process, we are making our textile materials more dyeable. So ultimately, we are coming to this point where we are improving absorbency and whiteness of the textile materials prior to dyeing. This is something which is very important. In addition to this, the type of machinery which we are using for dyeing also plays a vital role. Then the material liquor ratio which we are using, that is the amount of liquor being used to dye. Say we are interested in dyeing 10 kgs of textile material, how much liquor has to be there to dye that particular fabric. Then again, pH, at what pH we are doing is, then chemical reactivity of the substances which we are using. These days there is a growing concern over the use of eco-friendly products also. A lot of companies around the world are manufacturing products which are more eco-friendly, which can be used. So a lot of companies, they are approaching this way also, they are moving ahead this way also, but keeping in view the global concerns. Especially developed countries, they have brought in their own norms for all the products, whereby which we have to use certain chemicals which are to be eco-friendly in nature, or the emission levels are on the lesser side, that is the toxicity and all are on the lesser side. So this is what we have in this case of your dyeing. And then this is prerequisites of dyeing. Prior to dyeing, what we need to do. Then next is, how do we dye textile materials? How do we dye textile materials? This is the obvious question that comes to our mind. What is the preparation, and then how do we dye textile materials? Textile materials are dyed generally with dyes these days. Coloring materials basically are of three types. One is dyes, second is pigments, number three is ingredient dyes. So dyes are the most widely used materials which are being used. And then pigments, dyes they are soluble in one of the solvents. One of the will be soluble in some of the solvents, some mediums. Whereas in the case of pigments are insoluble. They are to be trapped inside. And third one is your ingredient dyes. In the case of ingredient dyes, we have a very different mechanism. They will be developing color in situ. That is, when these chemicals are treated onto the fabric surface, when they will be combining together at appropriate conditions, appropriate temperature and pressure conditions, and pH also, they will be producing color. See, this is the fundamental difference between the three, that is dye, pigments and ingredient dyes. So generally used, the most commonly used, simplest are the dyes which we are using for the dyeing of textile materials. So you might, I think we already studied this also, that we are having a number of dye classes, like we have dry dyes, the simplest of the dyes are our brick dyes. Then we have wet dyes, we have reactive dyes, we have sulfur dyes, we have metal complex dyes, we have dispersed dyes, we have metal complex dyes. See, a large list of, we have basic dyes, list is there, endless list of this dyes is there, wet dyes which are being used. So now the type and the application of particular dye class depends on the type of fiber that we have. Alright, this is there.